What is going on, everybody? It's the Reformation Keegan, and I'm here today with another comic analysis slash review. Today, we are looking at Superman Strength by Scott McCloud. And I must confess, I have not read a lot of Scott McCloud's work, but I have a great admiration for what he has contributed to the canon of comics. He's an amazing cartoonist as well. And I was really intrigued to read this. I had Superman Strength on my list for a pretty long time for reads, and I'm happy that I got around to it. And I must confess, the one marketing strategy that they used to get me enticed was having Alex Ross as the cover artist, because I found the covers absolutely amazing. So, see, we have the first cover here for book one, and then book two right here is probably my favorite cover of the bunch. I really like the color scheme of it, and I think the asphalt orange and the blue just really pop out. And book three. So this is a mini series under the Prestige format, and it was longer than usual in the sense that the story was extended, even though it was a mini series. If that makes sense, it's a paradox, because the books were about 40 to 48 pages each, and that was fine. I think there were a couple things I would have changed with it in terms of syntax and in terms of placement. So we have Superman obviously as the main character, and we have a lot of flashbacks with John talking to Lois about how Clark almost discovered who he was at 10 years old. He gets a glimpse of it when he runs all the way to Chicago in under an hour. And that is a nice little precursor to see how Clark is going to take responsibility for his powers, such as when he finds a group of people in a slum and has to try to take responsibility for dividing them both and has to think of an escape route to get out of the situation. So I really like that part because it shows the emotional maturity of Clark at a young age to try to not just conceal his powers, but to use them for the betterment of everybody else going forward. And we can see that in his interactions with Fido, who is a new character that Scott devises. And I really liked the conception of Fido as a character. And I'll get to him in a minute because I wanted to finish what I was saying about Clark. And Clark learns at 10 how he has to find it within himself to create this division of needing to save people and also needing to negotiate with himself on the number of people that he saves. And you can't always save everybody, but what you can do is keep it within your own power and control to save who you can save. And that's something that Clark needs to figure out. And there's a nice allegorical theme to this story because it shows how personal strife and personal trauma when you're younger can really impact you in your adult life. And we see that through Fido. Again, he's a newer character, and I don't think he's been used much since this story, and it's a shame because I think that the Fido character has a lot of potential. And the one thing that I would have changed in terms of format, like I said a couple minutes ago, is that Fido's origin story is revealed in book 3, and that is the final part of this arc. I would have had it in book 1 because it would have given you a precursor to the madness and the method to the madness of the character. And then it would have gave the audience an understanding of Fido's motivations, because I found during the story, it took me a little bit to find what his motivations are. I found out after book 1 because I really, really thought about it, but to the casual viewer, it's going to be hard for them to divulge the motivations that Fido has. But what I did like when Scott McCloud really dug into his origin story is that Fido is a nickname, and he got it based off of his father, because his father was nicknamed the Pitbull, and the man who apparently broke Superman's arm, even though he doesn't, and Fido finds this out later. And Fido has relations to a dog, as you would probably see when you're younger in the dog commercials, and this is actually brought up in book 3 a little bit. And I thought that was a nice little clarification to know why John Pollock is called Fido. But John Pollock is a very troubled character, so I guess characterization is the main motif that I'm going for with with this analysis, because he's very intriguing in the sense that his childhood was very messed up, and he had a traumatic childhood, and he was bullied as a kid, as Sully says it, and it's an interesting concept because we can see how villainy is really based off of a lack of control when you're a child or when you are a young adolescent. I really enjoyed this because Fido, to me, yes, he was the villain, but you as the audience can have an understanding of why he's acting the way he does. So, for example, he works at LexCorp, and there are these gloves, these golden gloves, and they hold a lot of power. And he says that he created them. So he makes a plan to break into LexCorp, and it's a 3-step plan to distract Superman. So by the time Superman gets down to the facility, Fido and his team are already gone. So Fido has a sense of wisdom that, one, he acquires as a child, and two, a sense of wisdom that he acquires from working at LexCorp, and he uses it, but it's the perfect example of thinking of something in theory and putting it in execution, and the lack of execution is what shows the incompetency of the villain. Because Fido is very intelligent, but he's also very incompetent, and that's based off of personal strife when you were younger, because you had to mature earlier and didn't get the sense to gradually and naturally mature as a young adolescent. So Fido had to mature a bit earlier, and Scott McCloud gives him a lot of gutsy characteristics, like he blows smoke in Clark's face, which is a very bold move, and I like that because it shows that he's not just a cowardly villain, but he's willing to get in your face literally and tell you exactly what he feels. So I really like that, and he does this 3-step plan to distract Superman. So he bombs a bridge, and then he lights fire to a hospital, and then he also tries to burn down a saucer restaurant, because he knows, okay, this is going to take about 2 minutes each, and then we can run in and we can get out. So Clark, for about 6 to 8 minutes, is going to be distracted, which is a very short window time to be able to pull off a heist like this, but Fido believes he can do it. So he gets the gloves because the gloves give him control, and he can even shrink things and put things in a jar like he does with Lois to try to keep her away, because he knows that she can help Clark. And he also gets Clark's head in this teleportation, because the gloves can make him teleport. And he has Clark's head in the teleportation, and then Clark's body is sitting in LexCorp, and Lex is kind of a little bit flabbergasted and perplexed at that situation and that scenario. So Fido is a very unique villain in that sense, where he's very intelligent but also very incompetent, and you get that juxtaposition, and paradoxically it gives you a bad execution of the character, which I think is intriguing. And I think it could have been expanded even upon more after this. So I'm surprised that the character of Fido hasn't been used all that much more, because he could be a very underrated character, almost like a Hush to a Batman, where Fido can, based on his childhood, can relate to Clark and go, hey, like, Clark had a messed up childhood, and I've had a messed up childhood, so I know that I can get in his head and play games with him. And that would be really intriguing to see if anybody was ever going to create another Fido story. So that's my analysis on the character, and I think the character was really good. And I have my notes here, so I'm looking over to just make sure I didn't gloss over anything. But the one thing I did like is they kept some originality throughout the flashbacks with Lois and John, where John is revealing some of the struggles that Clark had when he was younger and trying to find himself and trying to understand how his powers worked. I like that because it gives continuity to the character. So if there's a newer reader that is coming in to read Superman's strength, they can have a little bit of an understanding of what the younger character consists of. So they're not just brought into the adult version of Superman with any lack of knowledge and not knowing the relationship with Lois, or not knowing how Clark necessarily acts in certain situations. So I like that. And Fido also can use the kryptonite to drop on Superman, because he already does his research by working at LexCorp, so that's a nice little tie-in too that Scott McCloud uses. And he drops it onto him at the conclusion, and Lois finds a way to, because she's shrunken, she pops the cork off the bottle that she's in, and she ends up saving Clark, which is a nice little romance-themed narrative that you can always put in with Clark. So I like that. I like that originality. And also I liked the interaction with Lex and Fido, because Fido tries to outsmart Lex, and Lex ironically says that Fido is young and cocky. And if you've ever watched Smallville, you'll know that Lex is exactly that. So that's a nice little ironic twist that Scott McCloud uses from a literature point of view, and a nice little homage. So that's called intertextuality in English, except it's not intertextuality per se, because it is relating a new story to a film, but it really is an intertextuality in the sense by relating back to something that's already been published and distributed, and taking it and making it something that your audience can relate to going forward. So that was a nice little intriguing scenario there that he did. And Fido tries to negotiate with Lex, and Lex, as we know, is the ultimate negotiator. And he tries to negotiate with Lex, saying, hey, I get my gloves back that LexCorp stole from me, and we can work together, and you can have Superman's head on a platter, literally, because of the teleportation. His head's still put in the jar, or sorry, in the fishbowl. And you can have all the money and fortune you want. And Lex knows that Fido is not smarter than him, so Lex looks at this arrogance for naivety and says, no, I'm not going to do that. So then, and Lex also has another set of gloves anyways, because you got to remember, Lex is always 100 steps ahead of everybody. And Lex, at the end, almost like Last Days of Lex Luthor, has to say, Clark, I need you to save my city. And you know that Lex is desperate when he needs Superman's help, because all Lex wants to do is take down Superman, but he will also work with him when he absolutely has to. So again, I like those little tie-ins that Scott McCloud did here. It was really good, this story, and I'm just gonna put a little bow on it, because I thought the third book, number 3, ironically was the best, even though I would have taken the origin story of Fido and put it at the beginning, because I just think that the narrative would have flowed better that way. But that's also just my opinion. But I liked the relationship between Fido and his father, Pitbull, because it seemed like Pitbull was never there for him, and Pitbull just lying to him that he broke Superman's arm, because the first book is actually about that, the man that broke Superman's arm, and he never did. Superman's arm was just sprained. And that was unique, because Fido wanted to idolize his father, even though Fido had a messed up childhood. And Fido lets his emotions overtake him. He already almost has Superman beat. He's got the kryptonite on him. He's ready to get everything he wanted out of Clark. But then the immaturity and the naivety come out, because he's about to call his dad and say, hey, you never did break Superman's arm. You're a liar, and I feel betrayed, and I'm disappointed, because there's still that young kid within Fido that still wants that approval from his father and from the world. And that costs him. Seeking the opinions of others costs Fido everything and lands him in jail, because he was about to pull this off, but that little incompetency just from being too young and too inexperienced costs him his entire life. And that's a really, really powerful allegorical narrative that still happens today, where you see people that are young, they have a little bit of money, and they're successful, but they make small errors along the way, and it costs them whatever they want going into further adulthood. So I thought this was masterfully written. And at the end of the day, Fido finds out that his father has been dead for 3 weeks, and he doesn't even know it, which again shows the selfishness and the naivety of the character that I think could be further explored going forward. And again, it just surprises me that nobody has taken this and tried to do anything with it. But you never know. Maybe in the future something will happen. I'm even thinking about writing some stuff too. I don't think it would ever get published. You never know. But I am about to obtain my full master's by early next year. So I'm hoping that I can, publish some stuff comic-wise, because I do have some ideas, but I'm not going to exploit them fully here. But I do have some ideas that I would like to come up with and hopefully try to get published, which is, again, a long shot, but I'm trying to remain optimistic, because stuff like this is something that I have a very deep passion for, and I like to look at things way beyond a surface level at a more intricate level and try to get my audience, when I'm writing something, to try to connect with that. And what Scott McCloud does here is he gives you little tidbits of everything to kind of hold your hand along the way, so then you can make these intertextual connections with the character from other places that you may have seen the character act like this, which I really liked. So that's basically my little analysis on Superman's strength. I think this is a really really overlooked story that I don't see a lot of people discussing. I think the only reason a lot of people really like this narrative, if they have it, is probably because of the Alex Ross covers, which are a 1,000 out of 10. But I think it's better to just look past the cover. You think of the cover as a marketing strategy to get you to buy it and then actually read it, because the art's different in here, but the art isn't bad and the story is really, really, really unique. So again, I would 100% recommend Superman Strength, because it makes you think a little more critically and analytically, makes you think a little bit deeper on allegorical situations with human morality, which I think is always a fun topic of discussion. So I would read it if I were you. And the language is very simplistic in the sense that you can understand it, but just have a decent understanding on the character and try to relate to Fido throughout his younger years. That's going to really help you understand the narrative and make some intricate and sentimental connections to it. But that's Superman Strength, so let me know what you guys think. I thought it was brilliant. And don't forget, most of all, to subscribe, because I'm going to be doing more of these videos, and I'm going to eventually expand past Superman, but I'm still going to have other Superman stuff, because I want to get more into, analyzing Batman stuff and maybe some more Alan Moore, which I did for V for Vendetta. So if you haven't seen that, please watch the video. It's one of my favorites to do. And I'll be back with more soon. And most of all, feel free to interact, send some comments, give likes, but subscriptions are always the most important. So if you can do that, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you relatively soon.